Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Tyler, and this is my Tabletop. Today we are doing another book review. Obviously, for the last few weeks I've been kind of obsessed with A Billion Suns, so I figure I'd go through a brief review of the book, and after having played a few games, give my 2 cents on the game itself. So, here we go. Now, this is A Billion Suns, Interstellar Fleet Battles, written by Mike Hutchinson, published by Osprey Wargames. Now, it's a standard Osprey Blue Book, which means it is very thin. Comes to 64 pages total. So, not a lot of chaff. So, the book is full color, obviously, and layout is pretty standard for most gaming books. You have a brief intro to the world, which, to be honest, this page and a half is pretty much all of the world building for the whole game. It is very much a build your own game out of it. These are just the rules. What you make out of it is what you make of it. The game is designed for 2 to 4 players. It can kind of be played with more, but it was balanced for 2 to 4. You have a brief tutorial, a solo tutorial, which I encourage you to go through. It definitely helps. Your need to play guide. Some of the highlights include you use D6, D8, D10, D12 dice. You need a deck of cards. And you may need more than one table. Well, actually, most of the time you need more than one table. Now, don't let this discourage you. A table in this instance is just a flat surface to play on. It could be, you could take your dining room table or your normal gaming table and just tape off to cordon it out into a few different tables. That's fine. You can use pretty much any flat surface as a table. And the other thing you'll need, obviously, is minis. Now, this is where I really enjoy A Billion Suns, because all the minis really need to include is a flight stand. They just need a center mark that you can measure from. The size of the ships is entirely up to you. So, then he moves into the kind of the definition of the spaceships. You have battle groups, which are groups of 1 to 5 spaceships, all of the same class. So if you've played Gaslands, you know that the way Gaslands works is you pay points for specific types of motor vehicle, car, truck, heavy truck, etc. And then you pay points for weapons, and then you pay points for perks. In A Billion Suns, you just pay for the ship. Its weapon loadout, its stats are all decided by its stat line right here. Now, what this ship looks like looking at a gunship, what this ship looks like is entirely up to you. How big it is on the table is entirely up to you. Because everything is measured from the center point of the model, as long as it's got a flight stand or a mark at the very center to measure from, how big it is does not matter. Now, the stat called mass, obviously, you start low with fighters and recon wings, and then you go up to battleship, which has a larger mass. So, if you want to stay internally consistent within your fleet, smaller ships going to bigger ships. But that's not required. You can do whatever you want with it, which I really enjoy. And if you go on the community's Facebook group, you see people doing all sorts of stuff. They're using Battlefleet Gothic, Warhammer models. Full Thrust, I think, is the Starship game. They use those. Brigade models has plenty of them. People are kit bashing and coming up with stuff out of their scrap bins like I'm doing. 3D printing all sorts of models. It's really really cool to see the creativity that this game encourages by not having a lot there. And it not mattering what you put on it. How many guns are you going to put on your frigate? Doesn't matter. Regardless of whether you model it with 1 gun, no guns, or 100 guns, you know it has light rail guns and turbo blasters. That's it. That's all it's got. Brief rundown of the stat line. You have the cost, which is the cost in credits, which are the game's victory points. You have the mass of the ship, which is kind of the bulk of the ship. It is not the hit points, it's just how heavy the ship is. Thrust, which is its movement speed, obviously. Silhouette, which is it's the physical size and how bright it is. So a ship that's got a low silhouette is hard to find in space. It's hard to hit. Your silhouette is also the hit points of your ship. It's the most amount of damage it can take before it's destroyed. And then you have shields, which are obviously help dissipate attacks. 2 things that come up from ship classes and dice rolling, that type of stuff. In A Billion Suns, you're always aiming down. So you want low values. Low values are good. High values, if you hit the high value on a die, it's a dud and automatically fails whatever it is, whatever test you're doing. So a D6 is a 6. That's a dud. D10 has a 10 for a dud. If you naturally hit it, it doesn't matter. You can't modify it to make it work. Unless it specifically says, but I don't think there's any. And the other thing is what I said about cost. The game, what makes this game really different is there is no army lists. Unlike every other game I've ever played, you start with no ships on the battlefield, and you start with not really a dedicated list. You and your opponent decide the scale of the game, which decides how many points are available on the table. The number of credits, victory points, that are available to earn through contracts. And then you have to decide how much in debt am I going to go to try and get those contracts. Can I earn the points back? Like if I buy a battle cruiser that's 40 points, can I earn that back in order to win? If I'm playing in a small scale game, there might not be 40 points available at all. So it's something you have to keep in mind, but it also means that there are no army lists. What you bring to the table might change from game to game. As a matter of fact, it almost always does because it's situational. You decide your contracts and what you're trying to do on the table before you put your first model on the table. So you know what you're trying to do and how long you have to do it. Okay, that's my... measuring convention is to the center of the model, like I said. So scale. Scale is between 1 and 10. Scale of 1 is very small. Scale of 10 is very big. The scale of the game decides the number of credits, read victory points, that are available. It also decides certain things about objectives, like facilities, spaceports, and that type of thing that you're trying to destroy. They may have a silhouette value that is based on the scale of the game. Might be like scale divided by 2, or something like that. You're allowed to run a deficit on credits, because obviously you start the game with 0. So in order to get onto the table and start earning points, you're going to have to go into a deficit. Which I think is an interesting concept. Then he goes into round structure, which is pretty straightforward to follow. You have a command phase where you spend command points that you refresh every round to seize initiative, jump ships in, and then do tactical orders. Jumping. So you can only bring ships onto the table around jump points. Jump points are just points in space that you deploy. They're specific to you, so your opponent can't use your jump points, you can't use theirs. I guess, reading this, they have mass, silhouettes, and shields, so I guess in theory you could destroy them. That's not something that we tried to do in our games. That's interesting to note. It's important where you put your jump points, and it's something that you have to keep in mind when you're setting up. And this happens, of course, after setup of the objectives and whatnot. So, things are... So then he goes into the tactical phase. So this is when you're actually interacting with your ships. You issue an order, either extra movement, give yourself a reroll on dice, repair, or jump out. Now, something to keep in mind with the jump out is that a lot of times this is how you score points. Like a contract will say you need to go to this point, do this thing, and then jump out, and then you'll score points. But you do not get points back. Like, once you spend the money, you don't get the money back by jumping out. Like, there's no incentive to keep your ships alive in terms of getting a return on your money. So, getting them... Unless there's a contract that says, like, you must destroy an enemy ship or something like that. But I don't think there are any in the core contracts. Movement is pretty simple. You can pivot by any amount. If you pivot more than 90 degrees, you can't use your primary weapons. So your primary weapons are in a 45-degree front-facing cone, and then auxiliary is a 180 front-facing cone. So if you pivot more than 90 degrees... you can't use your primaries. And then you move up to your thrust. Battle groups, which, like I said, are 1 to 5 ships in the same class, brought in at the same time, must remain within 3 inches of another ship in their battle group. If you get too close to an enemy or an object that has you within its auxiliary weapon arc, they can fire at you. It's called passive attack. You can only jump out when you're close to a jump point. And then you do your active step, and then there's scan. Scan is used for objectives. So here is now you get into a detailed combat system. You can see bigger guns get bigger dice and more dice. So you roll to hit. They try to save against their shields. If they fail, you do a certain amount of damage per failed save. And basically you're creating a pool of tokens, and the opponent will need to... If the pool of tokens has more tokens than the silhouette value of an individual ship in a battle group, they will need to remove a ship, remove the silhouette number of tokens, and then recheck. For example, do a quick example. Gunships have a silhouette of 4. So if I have 2 gunships in a battle group, and I take 5 points of damage, I will have to remove a gunship and subtract 4 from the number of damage tokens, leaving me with 1. So I have 1 gunship left with 1 damage token. It goes into arc of fire and attacking. So resolve, you gather your hit dice, you roll to hit. You're going equal to or under target silhouette. And then if you get a critical hit, which is a 1, you add an extra die. Now, to do saving throws, the die that you're rolling for saving throws is based on the die of the attacker. So if the attacker is rolling d6s at you, that's what you're rolling for shields. It's very easy, just pick up the dice that they used. You roll your shield value, you're looking for equal to or under the shield value. If you dud, it doesn't cancel a hit. And then multiply the number of unsaved hits by the damage value. And then I talked about how to destroy ships. Goes through a brief example. And then it hits into the additional rules. So it explains the full command phase. You assign tokens, reveal helms, determine initiative. And it talks about each of the tactical orders you can do. It gives you small bonuses to an active group. Talks about additional jump rules, like jump shock, which means that you can, if you jump in a bigger ship, something with more mass, ships smaller than it take damage. Can potentially take damage. Their shields can save it, though. Jump point hopping. And then additional tactical phase rules. That's pretty much how it goes. It goes through the turn order very simply, and then it goes back to the start of the turn order and additional command phase rules, then additional jump phase rules, and then additional tactical phase rules. Critical weapons malfunctions. Mother's Wing, which is really cool. It's where carriers' shields are can protect ships that have a smaller mass than them. Or, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's a lighter mass. Okay. And then there's a more advanced example. Talks about utility ships, which are the meat of the contract system. You need utility ships to do your job. You can only have scale number of utility ships. That's not scale number of battle groups of utility ships. That is scale number of individual ships. So in a scale 3, you can only have 3. Split up through however many battle groups you want. Carriers talks about some special rules for them that they count as jump points for ships of mass 0 and light utility ships, which is really nice. Some extra rules for space, dangerous terrain, that type of stuff. The different object classes, you have asteroids, comsats, facilities, independent ships, planetoids, gravity well, can't jump too close to a planet. Just extra tokens, talks about having them. Now, contracts. This is the other big part of the game. And so what you do is, this is where the deck of cards comes in. It has you take, you separate out the face cards, king, queen, jack, of all 4 suits, shuffle them up, and you draw 3 cards. Now, they can't be the same suit. So if you draw a jack of clubs, you can't, if you draw another club, you need to discard it and draw again. Once you've gotten 3, you will generate your contract decks, this is where the scoring comes from. And your contract decks are, you make one for each of the 3 suits. So if you draw the jack of spades, you will make a spades deck, which is, you take the lowest scale number of cards. So in a scale 3, you take the ace, the 2, and the 3 of spades, and you do it a certain way. Spades are arranged in ascending order, hearts in descending, clubs are shuffled. Same with diamonds. And then, like a contract will say, draw the topmost card. and then you do it. And then each contract has a mechanism for gaining credits based on the card. And so here is the important table for scale. So this has the scale, 1 through 10, and the number of players. So in a 2-player game, like I had said before, you bring in a battleship scale 40, credit, costs 40, you might not recoup that. And as a matter of fact, scale 4 is the first time that there is more than 40 points on the table. Now, that is the maximum revenue available from all 3 contracts. The game ends when 2 contracts are closed out. The end of the round where 2 contracts have been closed. So, you might never get that. Putting a battleship in at scale 4 is probably not a good idea. Contract exhaustion, it's when no more points can be scored. So, here is the full setup rules. So before we had a very brief setup. Step 1, you agree to the scale. Then you generate your contracts. Pick a system admin, you roll to see who is system admin. The winner sets up the terrain. And, okay, so there's different contract decks. This is the core systems contracts. This is the one that's coming with the book. Mike has already said that he's working on others that will be available for download. And now it goes into, so each face card of each suit is something different. So you have, Infowar, Patrol, Demolition, yada, yada, yada. And each contract has its specific rules. So it says, if we look at supply contract, which is the Queen of Hearts, it says set up, create a Hearts contract deck, obviously. Set up 1 planetoid. And then it defines docking. When a utility ship battle group without a dock token scans a Hearts planetoid, controller places a dock token on that battle group. They may not move, but they may use Red Alert, which is how you heal. A battle group with a dock token may discard that token at the start of its activation. And then supply. When a utility ship battle group with a dock token scans Hearts planetoid, each ship in the scanning battle group that is within scan range places M, so mass, friendly supply tokens onto the scanned planetoid. And then at the end of round 3, discard any cards remaining in the Heart contract deck. And then revenue, which explains how you make money off of this contract. In the end phase, the CEO with the most supply tokens on the planetoid chooses the CEO that has the first opportunity to score. To score, you discard a number of tokens equal to the face value of the top card, and then discard the card. And each contract does that it goes through the details of how you score and stuff like that. It's nice. It's a good idea to familiarize yourself with them. We've really benefited from each owning a copy of the game so that we can reference different places. So, the players are representing CEOs of a corporation in this game. Now, there are no faction rules for this game. Instead, you make your own faction. You decide in advance the number of capital. So, there's credits, and then there's capital. Credits are spent in-game. Capital is spent before game on corporate competitive advantages. Now, these are faction traits. And they're arranged like tech trees. It doesn't look like it. They're shown to you in a linear fashion, but they are tech trees. So you have the aggression tree, which you take the level 0, and it says the rule for this is you must have no other level 0 advantages. And now all of the level 0s in all of the different trees have that. So what that means is you pick a tree and you're locked into it. You can't. But there are occasional dips. So let's say you pick Helmsman. You take the level 0. Now, let me see if I can find the... Oh, here it is. So you can only take what's within the Helmsman, except, like here, in the military tree, this particular ability says requires level 0 and 1 of military, or level 2 Helmsman. So you could dip into this and take this ability. And there's a few others kicking around that are like that. Your mileage may vary. Now, the other thing is there's a very simple campaign system in the back. Very simple. Basically, you start at scale 3, and then each game you go up 1 point in scale. And there's a simple scoring system. And some designer's notes. And then a quick reference. And that's it. Like, this is super thin. Now, I've played 3 games so far, and I gotta say, I really, really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. Every single game has been entirely different. We played 2 scale 3 games and a scale 4. And they've all played very, very different. The creativity that you're allowed to have is really a bonus in this, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I wouldn't go straight into a campaign, just because, you want to get used to the rules. He has also published a set of solo rules on his website that you can use, because obviously we are still in COVID lockdowns all over the place, so it may be hard to find people to play with. But we've been making some mistakes and going through the learning curve. But overall, it has been a blast to play. Goes through quick. It's very different, and I like that. I like that it's different. Overall, fantastic game. Can't wait to play some bigger matches. Looking forward to putting together more models. I've got I've got a resin 3D printer on the way, so I will probably be 3D printing a little bit more of my stuff, but I will still be doing some kit bashes and that type of stuff, and publishing them for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this. Kind of dive through the rules. If you like this kind of content, let me know. I do have more rule books I can go through and more gaming related content books that I'd be more than happy to review for you guys. But thank you guys for watching. If you like it, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm Tyler. This has been my Tabletop.